Good friend of the show, Bob Beckel, Democratic strategist. Bob, we had to ask our favorite Democrat what he thought of the debates. Welcome back to Brian and the Judge.
It's nice to be here, guys. Are you talking about the Republican debate?
Yes.
I'll tell you, first of all, the first one I didn't sleep through, which is good. And on balance, I'll tell you, I thought that McCain came back last night strongly. I think Romney was put on the defensive throughout the night. Giuliani did okay. And I'm not so sure Thompson was hurt as bad as some people think by not being there.
Well, here's the thing, Bob. This is my theory. I'd like Thompson to be a contender all the way through, because then people start saying maybe we don't need to start in the spring before the primaries. Maybe we'll go back to the way it was.
Yeah, I mean, let's remember that what's unusual here is not Thompson getting in the fall. It's all the rest of these people getting in as early as they did. Historically, people get into this race in the fall of the year before the election. I mean, Bill Clinton didn't even announce for president until the...
All right, but it's a different era now. Well, what about the chairman of the Republican Party of New Hampshire, and I don't know who the person is, but obviously had his nose out of joint about Fred being 3,000 miles away. Is that the kind of stuff that will be forgotten when the issues come to the fore?
I think it's probably a little impact, but not much. I mean, in the final analysis, people in New Hampshire are late breakers when they make these decisions, and it's probably not going to be decided by them until early January, thereabouts. So I think Thompson, it would have been better he'd been there. Yeah, except that, on the other hand, the first thing out of the box, if he had gone up there the day he announced and made a mistake, he would have a hard time recovering from it. So I think being able to control your own announcement day is more important than taking a little heat from the Republican chairman of New Hampshire.
Are we going to be surprised by who emerges?
I think on the Republican side, yeah, it's as unsettled a Republican situation as I've seen in all my years in politics. Normally it's Republicans who have a front runner and they stick with the front runner from beginning to end. In fact, the front runner for the Republican nomination in the polls after Labor Day has won the Republican nomination going as far back as Eisenhower. That would mean that Giuliani should have a lock on it, but I don't buy that for a second. I think Giuliani's got more problems than would appear on the surface, and I think Thompson's going to pose him some real problems. There is no doubt that if you look at these polls of Republican primary voters, there is a desire on their part to have another choice, unlike the Democratic side, where they're pretty well content with their choices. So I think Thompson can fill that void. Let's also remember he is the only candidate from the South, really, except for Huckabee. But the first-year candidate, he's from the South, and that generally gives you an advantage in a whole lot of ways.
What we loved is the Ron Paul, Governor Huckabee exchange. It was real, it was authentic, and they actually were not, they were making progress, building on each other's answers. Why can't we get more of that? Have you seen a format that you could put forward that would allow these two, any two, to pair off regularly?
I think there ought to be a way to get two or maybe three candidates in. So there's so many of these forums out there. It's not as if you're going to miss an opportunity to do that. But when you have 9 people or whatever it is up there, you're not getting much more than sound bites. I mean, having a substantive discussion in this election year is probably as important as any election year. The other thing I suggest is I don't understand why Democrats and Republicans can't debate each other. There's no
Boy, that is just a great idea, but that's verboten these days.
Well, that may be verboten, but I'll tell you, you win these presidential elections not by being cautious. And if I were one of these candidates, I'd say, if I disagree with Hillary Clinton on something, instead of shooting lobs in from a distance, I'd say, why don't we get together and meet and talk about it?
And they'd never say yes, because there's nothing for the game.
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't.
What did you think of the question from the college student in the restaurant who basically said to Giuliani, how can you claim to be a Republican and yet in your personal life is so discombobulated and untraditional? And Rudy skirted the answer.
Giuliani can continue to say that this is my personal business, it's between my family and me. Well, that's not the way the game is played, Rudy. Everybody's family is fair game in this, and their marital situation, etc., is fair game. And let's remember that 25% of the Republican electorate is hardcore evangelical Christian voters. And family values does mean a lot to them. And Giuliani's got a lot of answering to do here. But, the more that we opt now for citizens to ask questions, which I like, by the way, and if you do it without screening the questions, you're going to find that voters are going to ask those kinds of questions, not the least of which is because they want to get some FaceTime on the cable, but also because they are legitimate questions. I can
all right, we only have about a minute left. I want to ask you about McCain.
I tell you, I saw a glimpse of the old McCain last
I did too.
night. I think there's something to be said about when your back's to the wall and everybody assumes that you're down. Look, for McCain, the only good news in all this is expectations have been very low for him the last 2 months. He hits a couple of good home runs like last night, and it sticks out. And I think people are going to be reminded, wait a minute, this guy's not gone yet.
Wow.
He is Bob Beckel, and he'll never be gone as long as we have this radio show.
You got that right. Hey, Bob, always a pleasure. Thanks very much. We'd love to have you back soon.
All right.
Interesting from a Democrat thinking that Rudy's skirting answering the questions and McCain's coming back.
Well, October 15th, they have to say, this is how much money I earned. If it comes back and he only earned $900,000, who's going to jump into that pool?
Exercising freedom of speech. It's Brian and the Judge on Fox News Talk.